Baltimore was just a whisker away from a Super Bowl berth in the 2023 season, and now they've reloaded with what might be the most complete roster in the entire NFL. With the Lombardi Trophy in their sights, the Ravens are poised to dominate this upcoming campaign. Could this be the most lethal lineup in the league? I believe it could be, so let's dive in. The Baltimore Ravens entered the 2024 NFL season looking to rebound off a disappointing loss to the eventual Super Bowl champion Chiefs. Although the Ravens ultimately fell short of their championship goals, 2023 was still an incredibly successful year that saw Lamar Jackson win his second NFL MVP award, quieting any and all noise and doubters that remained. Despite losing a couple of important pieces in the offseason, Kevin Zeitler and Patrick Queen, the Ravens added star power to their roster by bringing the King, Derrick Henry, to lead the back. The running back room in Baltimore clearly needed a reset, with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins clearly not getting it done in 2023. While Keaton Mitchell showed some big flashes, injury set his season off track, and he's certainly not someone the Ravens can rely on for such a big role this upcoming season. Derrick Henry was the absolute perfect fit. His big, mean, physical running style perfectly matches the identity of the Baltimore Ravens, who look to have the most dangerous ground attack in the NFL this season. Even without Henry, the Ravens already had such a deadly run game because of the attention that Lamar Jackson requires as a dual-threat quarterback. Now, Henry is poised to thrive behind the cleanest gaps he's had in years, and his punishing style will take a toll on defenders. The idea that he is washed is simply untrue. While he doesn't necessarily have that top gear to break away from the defense, he is still one of the best backs in the entire league, and the fact that he posted 4.2 yards per carry and 1,300 all-purpose yards last season on a one-dimensional Titans team is extremely impressive. With such a great threat to run the ball, defenses will be forced to stack the box, which will benefit every facet of the offense, including a receiving corps that is maybe the weakest position group on the roster. Zay Flowers is a budding star and could be primed for a major breakout season, but the Ravens don't have a lot of weapons on the outside around him. General Manager Eric DeCosta elected to bring back Nelson Agholor on a one-year deal while letting OBJ, who was extremely disappointing last year, hit the open market. That leaves Flowers as the 1, Rashad Bateman as a 2, and Agholor as a 3, which is pretty underwhelming. Now, Baltimore did spend 2 late-round picks on wideouts Taz Walker and Malik Cunningham, who both possess great speed and athleticism but have a lot of polishing to do in order to become real contributors on this offense. However, with Mark Andrews returning from injury as Lamar's #1 target, the Ravens should still have an extremely potent passing game with heavy emphasis on the play action and RPOs. Another notable loss for the Ravens was Kevin Zeitler, who anchored the right guard spot for the last 3 seasons. Combine that with the departure of John Simpson on the other guard spot and Morgan Moses, who started 14 games across both tackle spots, and you could see why the Ravens might be in trouble up front. But Baltimore made some moves to steady the ship, bringing in Josh Jones from Houston as a swing tackle and drafting tackle Roger Rosengarten out of Washington with their 2nd-round pick. Of course, Roger Stanley and Tyler Linderbaum will remain the starters at left tackle and center respectively, but every other starting spot on the line will be a new player. Their current depth is Andrew Voorhees slated to start at left guard, Ben Cleveland at right guard, and Rosengarten to immediately get in the mix at right tackle. But that is far from set in stone. It might not be the top offensive line that the Ravens have fielded in recent years, but it should be sufficient for now. Lamar Jackson's escapability and improvisational skills will undoubtedly make up for any deficiencies, ensuring the line gets the job done. The offense saw the addition of star power, but the defense may have improved even more through strong role players and depth. The obvious departure that has been talked about is Patrick Queen to the Steelers, but he may not have been as influential to the team as people viewed him. Looking back at Queen's career, he became a pro football focused darling in his last year with Baltimore, but it was certainly not always that way. Queen's first 2 years in the league graded out awfully in both pass coverage and run defense before he finally began to put it together in 2022 and carried that success over into the 2023 season. The interesting thing about that is that Patrick Queen's improvement aligns perfectly with the addition of Roquan Smith playing left outside linebacker. Smith has been an elite player for Baltimore since joining the team midway through the 2022 season, and it wouldn't be a stretch to say that heavily elevated the play of those around him. With that being said, it seems like the impact of Patrick Queen's departure might be overblown. Sure, he's been good for the past couple of years, but he was nearing certified bust territory before that. The Ravens should be able to replace his production fairly easily with Kyle Van Noy, who they brought in through the offseason. Ultimately, what should be much more impactful is the re-signing of Justin Madubuike as a left defensive end, who was a big reason why the Ravens had one of the best pass rushes in football last year. That's likely to be true once again in 2024, with loaded edges and what might be the top linebacker group in the game. Looking further along the defense, the Baltimore secondary looks stronger than ever before with the new additions of Nate Wiggins and TJ Tampa to pair alongside Martin Humphrey alongside the X and Brandon Stevens in the slot. Not to mention, with Kyle Hamilton emerging as a Swiss Army knife and potentially a top 5 safety in the NFL in just year 2, and Marcus Williams starting at the strong safety spot, the back of the end of the secondary is simply elite. It must be noted that the corner is one of the very hardest positions to adjust to from college to the pro game, so Wiggins and Tampa are certainly not guaranteed to succeed early, but Baltimore is so spoiled in the secondary that it doesn't really matter if they can't adjust right away. Neither of them are even starting as of right now, and that defensive back room already looks stacked. If Wiggins or Tampa are able to find their footing early on and become a true playmaker, the Ravens could seriously be the top defensive unit in the NFL this year. After looking at every position group on the Ravens, it's impossible to deny how good this roster looks on paper. Of course, how things play out in the field isn't always how they appear before the season, and injuries can change the outlook on things very fast, but it's safe to assume that they're immediately going to be one of the top units come this fall, and they will need to if they want to accomplish their goals. The Ravens got far last season. They played in the great of the regular season, and Lamar won the MVP again. The team won a couple of playoff games and got knocked out by the Chiefs. All around a successful year. But now the Ravens are setting their sights bigger. Obviously the goal last season was to win a Super Bowl, but the difference is anything less than a Super Bowl appearance in 2024 is going to be considered a failure. At the end of the day, it's probably going to come down to a January matchup against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to emerge out of the gauntlet that is the AFC. If not Mahomes, there are so many other incredibly talented AFC teams vying for a championship, like the Texans and the Bengals inside Baltimore's very own division, so it's going to take a perfect roster to go all the way. The good news is that the Ravens might just have it. When looking around at the revamped Ravens in 2024, one thing is abundantly clear. This time they are built for January. Sure, last year they knocked off a good young Texans team, but they have to be prepared for Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, or even an improved Stroud this time around. One of the biggest takeaways from their loss against Kansas City in the AFC Championship game was how they got away from the run game early on. With a backfield consisting of Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, it's not hard to see why John Harbaugh lost his discipline when he could put the ball in the hands of Lamar Jackson instead. But now it's a very different story, because Derrick Henry demands carries, and when the Ravens are inevitably back in a big playoff game, this time they can confidently run the ball. They can be physical, hit hard, beat you up, and tire you out because that's their identity. And when they've got their opponent off balance, that's when they strike with a big play, and they are built for playoff football. First, they have to survive through the regular season, though. One of the big things about this Ravens offseason that certainly signifies a promising regular season is a high amount of continuity, and that's not a lot of controversy. Obviously, their offensive line is one of the positions that's not really the case, but even looking at receiver, which is probably their weakest position group, all 3 starters are returning, which means they already have a strong rapport with Lamar Jackson and should be able to go in week 1. Similarly, on defense, Baltimore prioritized bringing back players rather than making big splashes in the free agent market, which could pay dividends in the long run considering how good their defense has already been. With defensive back especially, a lot of turnover can be catastrophic, and the Ravens have not only returned a very strong unit, but added on to it. To last through the course of a season and lift the Lombardi Trophy in February, depth is equally as important as top-end talent, and cornerback is one of the most commonly injured position groups across the league. It can be easy for teams to solely focus on gaping holes in the roster and ignoring all else, but the Ravens have been able to consistently accrue high levels talent and take the best player available because of how talented their roster already is. And talking about controversy, it was just last offseason that we were talking about Lamar Jackson not even being a Raven, potentially going to Atlanta. With high-profile players hanging in the balance, that type of thing can loom over a team and affect them over the course of a season. Now that the whole world knows Lamar is in Baltimore to stay, and he's no longer worried about the financial situation, all it means is that everyone in the organization can put greater focus on playing football and performing when they're on the field. To wrap up, the icing on the cake of this truly terrifying Ravens roster is the coaching staff. John Harbaugh gets a ton of credit, and deservedly so, as one of the most consistently successful head coaches in the league last year in year out. Additionally, Todd Monken's new scheme worked to perfection in 2023, and another year out of the Greg Roman era only means that Lamar will become more comfortable running the offense. On the other side of the ball, the Ravens did lose Mike Macdonald, who took a head coaching job in Seattle, and defensive backs coach Denard Wilson, who is now the DC for the Titans. However, promoting internally to make Zach Orr the new DC feels like the right move, and it means the players will be able to keep an extremely similar base scheme to last year. All in all, the Baltimore Ravens are one of the most well-rounded teams in the entire NFL, while also being maybe the most dynamic. Harbaugh and DeCosta have constructed a roster that strikes fear into the hearts of its opponents, and for good reason too. The team the Baltimore Ravens put on the field next year are going to be primetime TV, and you aren't going to want to miss it.